So first thing you might notice is that I got my charity license plate up tonight. So I'm official. I think I told you once before how that came about. I'll just review it real quick. Again, I'm all about reviewing. So I was driving to Paris, Idaho, at the courthouse to get license plates for my car, and nothing unusual other than I passed a vehicle coming the opposite way from me, and I noticed on its license plate there was the words "I rodeo." I rodeo. And I thought to myself, well, whoever's driving that car likes rodeo, and they probably follow rodeos around and go all to all of them they can, maybe participate or whatever. Anyway, they're heavy into rodeo. But that started a chain of thoughts that has materialized, and it materialized real quickly in the few miles that I had left to drive to the courthouse, because I thought, I wonder what I could put on my license plate that might tell what I hold dear. Instead of rodeos, I chose the word charity, because I had been studying quite a bit about it. I had some strong feelings about it, even all those many years ago. And I thought, when I get there, I'm just going to see if I can get a personal plate that has the word charity on it. And I went ahead and asked the clerk there when I was getting them, and she said, yeah, that particular one is available if you want it. And so I got it. And I can tell you a lot of stories that have developed out of that decision. A lot of conversations that people have struck up with me on the road, and driving into parking lots and parking garages, and just anywhere that I was slowed down and somebody could speak to me through the window. Or sometimes they wouldn't even speak. They'd just see the license plate and give me a thumbs up. And I knew what they were talking about. But it is dear to me, a lot dearer than I bet rodeo is to some people. But and definitely me, I'm not a rodeo person. But I like to think of myself as having charity as a goal and promoting it. And that's what I'm doing on this YouTube channel to a large degree, I think, or at least making the effort. Well, I didn't put that up just to talk about it all night, but I thought I'd review. I have since moved to Utah, and I checked to see if they had the same one over here. Somebody else already had it. Probably some girl named Charity. I think there are a few of those out there. But I substituted. I decided, well, if I can't have charity, I'll have something close to it. And then I chose the words I-L-U-V, and then the letter U, and then the number 2. I love you too. It comes close, don't you think? Well, anyway, I don't even have that one anymore, so I'm going to pick another one. But it's, I feel good when I promote the pure love of Christ, especially considering some of the things that I've learned about it, because it's been a big part of my study and my emphasis and my meditation, and it's become a big part of my belief system, which is kind of what I wanted to. This belief thing is kind of what I wanted to go tonight a little bit. I noticed in the Book of Mormon in particular, this is why I love the Book of Mormon so much, is because it has it emphasizes certain things more than sometimes the other scriptures do, even though they're all good too. But it emphasizes things, and it emphasizes them in such a way that it just drives the point home. And one of those words, now, if you go online and you look at the Scripture Study Helps, you can go to the index, a topical index, and you can type in the word. I forget whether it's either belief or unbelief. I think it's unbelief. You can type that word in, and it'll take you to all the places in the scriptures where it has that word, unbelief. And one day I did that. I couldn't believe how many references there were, especially in, like I said, in the Book of Mormon. It was something that it was pointed out to me by that little exercise. That it's definitely a point of emphasis. So I've thought a lot about it. When I think about it, I think of there's a scripture that comes up in 1 Timothy, and I've got it right here. I'll read it to you. I remembered, I had to look this up to see exactly where it was, but I remembered it from my youth somewhere, and I'm not sure whether it was a teacher or whether it was a speaker on a pulpit, from a pulpit, or what. I know President Nelson has given a talk about dwindling in unbelief, and that's what I want to talk about tonight, because quite often when this word unbelief is used, if you look around a little bit close to it, you'll find the word dwindle in unbelief. But we should be an example of the believers. 1 Timothy, verse 12, chapter 4. Let no man despise thy youth, but be thou an example of the believers, is what Paul says in this particular epistle. Be thou an example of the believers in word, in conversation. And then this next one, in charity, to exhortation. And I guess exhortation is what I'm trying to do tonight, when I'm exhorting you to pay attention to this unbelief word. To exhortation, to doctrine. Doctrine is just another word for instruction. Sometimes we throw words around, we don't know what they mean, but doctrine is simply another word for instruction. So I'm going to read it one more time. It's just a short one. Let no man despise thy youth. Be thou an example of the believers, in word, in conversation, in charity, in spirit, in faith, in doctrine. So if you'll bear with me tonight, I'm going to do a little more reading than I normally do, and I know sometimes that's just a big turn off to people. It really shouldn't be. But I've sat in enough congregations and listened to enough people to know that when somebody starts reading, I have a tendency to let my mind just drift to other things. So I'm going to ask you to kind of pay attention to the general tone of things tonight as I read some of these scriptures, and I'll just read. I just want to show you the prevalence of them, not so much get in depth as to what they mean in a particular usage or context, but just to give you a feel for how you should regard unbelief. Now, like I said, one of the things that you find out is that when you start looking up this word unbelief, you find out that in lots and lots of the scriptures, in the Book of Mormon in particular, but other places too, it talks about dwindling in unbelief. Well, so I took the time to look the word dwindle up. I knew you'd want me to. Here's what it says. To become smaller and smaller. To become smaller and smaller. Now, if I have time, I want to get over to Alma chapter 12, where it talks about greater and greater. It's just the opposite of this. To become smaller and smaller, to shrink and waste away, to fall away, as in quality, to degenerate Well, I don't want to do any of those things unless I'm falling away from a sinful life. But I don't want to fall away from the things I believe in just because I hear something that seems contrary, or I have some questions come up in my mind about how that could possibly be. And we all have those. If you don't have those, you're not a thinking person, because everybody that thinks and reads the scriptures will eventually run across something that they'll say, really? You expect me to believe that? I mean, if you're honest with yourself, that's what you'll say. So you have these questions of unbelief. I've had them and continue to have them, and I'm sure you've had them. It's a matter of how we deal with them. Again, if you think of putting a puzzle together, which is kind of what a testimony is making the pieces fit and feeling good about it. If you put a puzzle together, you'll think, oh, there's a piece, it'll go right there, and you'll try to put it in, and it won't go. It just doesn't work. The color's not right. It doesn't match the rest of the picture, or the structure of it's wrong, and you'll kind of lose hope, and you'll say, oh, shoot. Okay, so you have unbelief. That's okay. It's okay. Take that piece of the puzzle, set it on a shelf, set it off to the side, and start working on another one. And eventually you'll find one that fits, and you'll work on it a little bit, and then all of a sudden you're going to find out, oh, that piece I tried to get to work looks like it might work right here, and you put it in, and ta-da, it works. And you're sure glad you didn't throw it away. Wouldn't it be something if every piece that didn't quite fit the way you wanted it to, you just chucked in the garbage, threw away? What kind of a mosaic, beautiful mosaic would that make when you're all done with it, or when you're progressing more? So it kind of works like that. All right. So to become smaller and smaller, to shrink, to waste away, to fall away in quality, or degenerate. This doesn't sound like good directions to go to me. This dwindling thing. So now I'm going to go to the little look section in my gospel library where you can look things up. And I'm just, I hope this goes well, because I haven't, maybe I'm not as prepared as maybe I should be, but I just want to give you a feel for what unbelief, how it's used in context in the scriptures, and what we should do when we read it, see it. And again, I'm not going to get into the storylines on each of these. 1 Nephi chapter 12. Let's see if I can find it here. Okay. I'll just back up. And the angel said unto me, behold, these things shall dwindle in unbelief. And it came to pass that I beheld, after they had dwindled in unbelief, they became a dark and loathsome and filthy people, full of idleness and all manner of abominations. That's where the dwindling in unbelief took that group of people, and I won't go into the context. Okay, that's 1 Nephi chapter 12, toward the end of there. Okay, Alma chapter 45. And these are the words which I perceive that this very people, the Nephites, according to the spirit of revelation which is in me, in 400 years from the time that Jesus Christ shall manifest himself unto them, shall dwindle in unbelief. Now, if you get into the Nephite record and you find out what happened at the end of those 400 years, it's horrendous. It's an ugly picture. Yea, then shall they see wars and pestilences, famines and bloodshed, even until the people of Nephi shall become extinct. Yea, this because they shall dwindle in unbelief and fall into works of darkness. Again, not a very favorable context when you start dwindling in unbelief. Okay, we're just moving on down through these. Be patient and awake. 4th Nephi, chapter 1. And they did smite upon the people of Jesus, but the people of Jesus did not smite again. And thus they did dwindle in unbelief and wickedness from year to year, even until 230 years had passed away. So it takes a while. This dwindling does, but we read that from the dictionary, right? But again, negative things come about. Helaman chapter 15. Yea, even if they should dwindle in unbelief, the Lord shall prolong their days. So he's patient with them, even if they're dwindling in unbelief, until the time shall come which he has been spoken of by our fathers, and also the prophet Zenos. I can't see any other place. Anyway, even there, not that favorable of a situation. 3rd Nephi chapter 21. Therefore, when these works and the works which shall be wrought upon you hereafter shall come forth from the Gentiles unto your seed, which shall dwindle in unbelief because of iniquity. He's talking about the coming forth of the Book of Mormon. Is he talking about us? When these works and the works which shall be brought forth among you hereafter shall come forth from the Gentiles unto your seed, which shall dwindle in unbelief because of iniquity. Okay. 2nd Nephi chapter 1. But behold, when the time cometh that they shall dwindle in unbelief, after they have received so great blessings from the hand of the Lord, having a knowledge of the creation of the earth and all men, knowing great marvelous works of the Lord from the creation of the world, having power given unto them to do all things by faith, having commandments from the beginning, and having been brought by his infinite goodness to this precious land of promise. He's talking about the Americas. Behold, I say unto you, if the day shall come that they reject the Holy One of Israel, the true Messiah, and their Redeemer and their God, behold, the judgments of him that is just shall dwell upon them. So, right at the first, but behold, when the time cometh that they shall dwindle in unbelief, all that takes place. Okay. Mormon, chapter 9. And the reason why he ceaseth to do miracles among the children of men is because they dwindle in unbelief and depart from the right way, and know not the God in whom they should trust. Whenever I see that word way, I want to remember that when Christ was on the earth in New Testament times, there was no name for the church other than they called it followers of the way. So that they depart from the right way and know not the God in whom they should trust. That's what happens when you dwindle in unbelief. You're making believers out of you. Well, if we're not doing our job. And those that were faithful in keeping the commandments of the Lord were delivered at all times, whilst the sounds of their wicked brethren have been consigned to, whilst the thousands of their wicked brethren have been consigned to bondage or to perish by the sword, or to dwindle in unbelief. The opposite of hearkening, remember, is to not hearken and have our hearts hardened. Therefore, we dwindle in unbelief, and they mingle with the Lamanites, therefore. Okay, going on. I'm in Helaman chapter 6. And thus we did see that the Nephites did begin to dwindle in unbelief and grow in wickedness and abominations. You see why I read that scripture to begin with? Be thou an example of the believers in word, in conversation, in charity, in spirit, in faith, in purity. Be thou an example of the believers. Then, because otherwise, Helaman 6 again, verse 34, and thus we see that the Nephites did begin to dwindle on unbelief and grow in wickedness and abominations. Well, if you don't see the correlation, you're not listening very carefully. So, I'm not going to read too many more of these. Here's one in 1 Nephi 13. Behold, saith the Lamb, I will manifest myself unto thy seed, that they shall write many things which I shall minister unto them, which shall be plain and precious, and after thy seed shall be destroyed, and dwindle in unbelief. There's a correlation, isn't there, between that destruction and the definition that we had when we read about it, to become smaller and smaller, to shrink, to waste away, to fall away as in quality, or to degenerate. Unbelief. I'm not going to say too much more about that tonight, other than just to make you aware that it's all over in the scriptures, and particularly the Book of Mormon. And dwindling in unbelief takes you to a place you don't want to be. If that's not evident in the scriptures that I've read, just what little bit I've read in each verse, if that's not evident, then you're not listening carefully. You're not paying attention. And if you didn't listen, then you didn't hear. And so then you might have unbelief in what I'm saying. But if you listen, you find out that unbelief takes you down the wrong road. My counsel through 75 years of living is this, and I've already said it somewhat, and that is, I would expect that you'd have questions. There's a difference between having questions and having unbelief. You want to make sure you understand that. It's fine to have questions. Joseph Smith had questions when he went to the Sacred Grove. A lot of good things came out of that. But if he were to turn and start proclaiming that he didn't believe what he actually believed or what was shown to him, if he started to develop ideas of unbelief, like a lot of his people in the High Council did, especially during the Kirtland period, there's a lot of the general authorities of the church at that time couldn't take some of the financial problems that the church was having, and they were struggling with this and struggling with that. Heber C. Kimball and Brigham Young were the stalwarts, and the rest of them kind of fell away at one time or another, though they came back. But it's interesting to me that those that handled the place, the three witnesses, Martin Harris, Sidney Rigdon, and Oliver Cowdery, even though some of them grew bitter and fell away from the church later, they didn't deny the Book of Mormon. They didn't say, I no longer believe what I saw, what I felt, what I heard, what I experienced. And to me, that's kind of a testimony in itself, because the natural tendency is for them to start lashing out and saying that what they believe, they no longer believe, but they didn't do that. They held true to their beliefs. So, 1 Timothy chapter 4, verse 12, let no man despise thy youth, but be an example of the believers in word, in conversation, which is, I guess, is what we're having, except you're not talking back to me very much. Doggone it. In spirit, in faith, in purity. Please, please. I'd underline it a dozen times to emphasize the please. Don't be so quick to fall away from what you believe. I see some people saying, well, I no longer believe that, but they haven't come up with anything else that they believe. Or they substitute something that's frivolous and not meaningful, not comprehensive by any means. Don't dwindle, become smaller and smaller. Don't shrink away. Don't waste away. Don't fall away. Don't degenerate. It's not what we're here for. Now, I said I might get to Alma chapter 12. And I'm there already, so I'm going to turn there. If I can find it real quick, because it emphasizes this whole thing in what I think is a very meaningful way. Let's see. Alma chapter 12. Okay. Let me just scroll down here and see if I can find what I want to read to you. I hope I can. I guess I can always go to my scriptures, because I know I got it underlined there. Let's see. Okay. Now this is maybe it, but I'm going to go to my scriptures just because I don't want to leave something out. And read from Alma chapter 12. I love this scripture here in Alma chapter 12 because I've been through it and through enough of this life to realize that it's true. And this is, here it is. Maybe read it better here now that I can find the exact spot. Okay. And now Alma began to expound these things unto him. He's speaking to Zeezrom, and I'm not going to get into the storyline too much. Expound these things unto him, saying, it is given unto many to know the mysteries of God. Nevertheless, they are laid under a strict command, that they shall not impart only according to the portion of the word which he doth grant unto the children of man, according to the heed and diligence they give to him. Line upon line, it says, precept upon precept is how we get it. And they that will harden their hearts And what do we say harden your hearts means? That's what happens when you don't hearken. It happens by default. So when you don't hearken to the voice, hear and do what it says, then your heart becomes hardened. And they that will harden their hearts, to them is given the lesser portion of the word. Dwindle. Start to dwindle. Lesser and lesser. Okay. To them is given the lesser portion of the word, until they know nothing concerning the mysteries. And then they're taken captain by the devil and led down by his will to destruction. Remember those words we read out of the dictionary on what it means to dwindle? Sounds a lot like this, doesn't it? Now this is what is meant by the chains of hell, it says. And Amalek has spoken plainly concerning death. Let's see here. I don't know how much of this I want to read or need to read. Well, I think I'll read on. And Amalek has spoken plainly concerning death, and being raised from this mortality to a state of immortality and brought before the bar of God to be judged according to our works. Then if our hearts have been hardened, here we are again, the default of what happens when we don't hearken. Then if our hearts have been hardened, if we have hardened our hearts against the word, we might say the way, insomuch that it has not been found in us, then will our state be awful, for then we shall be condemned. All those scriptures that I just read out of the Book of Mormon about dwindling unbelief, didn't that sound like a condemnation? I'm sure it did. For our words will condemn us, yea, all our works will condemn us. We shall not be found spotless. Our thoughts will also condemn us. And then in this awful state, we shall not dare to look upon God. We would rather fain to be glad if we could command the rocks and the mountains to fall upon us, to hide from his presence. Once we have dwindled in unbelief. When we get to that point, bad things move in. Before you create a void in your understanding or in your belief system, if you're going to say, I don't believe that anymore, you better fill it with something you do believe that makes sense and fills the void. And continue to read and study. There's so many people nowadays on social media trying to do Satan's work and help influence and give doubt to everything. My counsel there is, the first thing you do is doubt the doubters. Be thou an example of the believers. Carry that message forward. Study as you go. And you'll find out that dwindling won't be part of your life, and because it's no longer part of because it doesn't get a foothold on some aspect of your life will turn out a whole lot better than it would have otherwise. That's a little counsel from me, but mostly it's counsel directly from the scriptures, which you can tell, lean on and believe. I recommend it to you as well. Keep trying. It'll work. I'm confident of that. I've been there, done things you haven't done yet. I'll keep talking, bringing uploads to you when I think about them and when I can. And your job is to weigh what I say and choose whether you believe or have unbelief. And we know which one we would prefer, right? I love you. Good night.